There exists a number that haunts the very foundations of physics, a number that relentlessly appears in equations describing reality itself. This number, it possesses no units, no readily apparent explanation, and seemingly no inherent reason to even exist, and yet, incredibly, without it, you would not exist. That number, it's 137. Or, to be more precise, 1 divided by 137, Einstein himself. He knew about this number. Feynman. He was utterly obsessed with it. Pauli was so deeply troubled by it that he dedicated years working alongside Carl Jung, the renowned psychologist, desperately seeking to unlock its meaning. An almost unbelievable fact, when Pauli was drawing his last breaths, Gurner Hospital, his room number, was chillingly 137. He reportedly confided in his assistant, "I am not going to make it." And tragically, he was right. This is not mere superstition. This is physics itself, unequivocally pointing towards something that physics cannot yet fully explain. So, let's unravel this mystery. Let me tell you what this number actually is. Back in 1916, a brilliant physicist named Arnold Sommerfeld was expanding upon Bohr's atomic model. He stumbled upon a perplexing discovery. Electrons within atoms behave in peculiar ways, demanding the introduction of a new constant, a number that precisely defined the strength of electromagnetic forces. He christened it alpha, the fine structure constant, and its observed value is approximately 1 divided by 137. But hold on, because here's where things get truly strange. This enigmatic number possesses no units. Almost every other constant in physics proudly displays its units. The speed of light, meters per second. Planck's constant, joule seconds. The gravitational constant possesses its own unique set of units, but alpha, this fine structure constant, remains stubbornly just a pure number, 1/137. This profoundly means it is not dependent on any measurement system whatsoever. It's independent of meters, kilograms, or seconds. It is, at its core, a ratio, existing independently of how we choose to measure reality. Therefore, it would be the same for any civilization, anywhere in the universe, capable of developing physics. Richard Feynman, undoubtedly one of the greatest physicists, after Einstein, penned his thoughts on this number. In his seminal book, QED, he famously stated that all good theoretical physicists should plaster this number upon their walls and consistently worry about it. He deemed it one of the greatest mysteries in physics, a magic number bestowed upon us with absolutely no understanding. But why did Feynman brand it magic? Because this number somehow weaves together 3 completely separate, seemingly disconnected domains of physics. It intricately combines the charge of the electron, directly representing electromagnetism, the speed of light, representing relativity, and finally, Planck's constant, representing the baffling world of quantum mechanics. 3 pillars of modern physics, 3 distinct, groundbreaking discoveries, 3 different scientific minds who unveiled them, and yet they all converge into a single, unexplained number. 1/137. Think deeply about what this implies. The 3 most significant revolutions in the history of physics: electromagnetism, revealed by Maxwell; relativity, brought forth by Einstein; quantum mechanics, pioneered by Planck, Bohr, and Heisenberg. 3 separate breakthroughs, spanning 3 distinct centuries, 3 entirely different ways of grasping the nature of reality. And yet, they all share a common factor, a single number that mysteriously appears across all three domains, almost as if the same architect meticulously designed all three buildings. This simply is not how physics typically operates. Different domains usually possess different constants, different equations, different governing principles, but 137 bridges them all. It powerfully suggests a fundamental unity. Lurking beneath the apparent diversity, Einstein dedicated his entire career to the pursuit of unifying physics. He desperately sought a single, elegant equation that could explain everything. Sadly, he never found it. But the fine structure constant strongly hints that such a unity does indeed exist. It tantalizingly suggests that electromagnetism, relativity, and quantum mechanics are not truly separate. They are profoundly connected by a single mysterious ratio. Now, let me show you why this seemingly insignificant number ultimately determines whether you can even exist. If the fine structure constant were to deviate by even a mere few percent, atoms would simply not function correctly. Chemistry as we know it would cease to exist. Stars would not form in the beautiful way they do. Carbon, the fundamental basis of all known life, would not be produced within the cosmic forges of stars. The fine structure constant is painstakingly tuned to precisely the value needed for complex life to emerge and thrive. Alter it even slightly, and the universe tragically becomes stereo. Or change it even more drastically, and atoms themselves become utterly impossible. This phenomenon is what physicists refer to as fine-tuning. The fundamental constants of nature appear to be exquisitely set to exact values that allow for complexity and ultimately life, as if some unseen hand meticulously calibrated the universe specifically for existence. Arthur Eddington was among the first to treat this phenomenon with utmost seriousness. Eddington, the esteemed astrophysicist who unequivocally confirmed Einstein's general theory of relativity through meticulous observations during a solar eclipse. He was no mere crank or crackpot. He was, undeniably, one of the most respected scientists of his era. Eddington became utterly fascinated with 137. He fervently believed that the number could be elegantly derived from pure mathematics alone. He posited that it was not a mere accident, but a fundamental necessity, a number that had to be 137, because the universe simply could not exist otherwise. He went even further. He perceived 137 as possessing profound spiritual significance, a crucial clue that the universe was meticulously designed according to precise mathematical principles, that lurking behind all the equations was a masterful mathematician. Einstein expressed similar views, though always with a degree of cautiousness. He wisely stated that everyone who is deeply involved in the rigorous pursuit of science inevitably becomes convinced that a universal intelligence is undeniably manifest within the very laws of the universe, a universal intelligence no vastly superior to that of mankind, a universal intelligence manifest in the laws, and one of those laws is the fine structure constant, 1/137. Carefully consider what Einstein was implying. Not necessarily that God exists in the traditional religious sense, but rather that the fundamental laws of physics reveal an inherent universal intelligence, an undeniable order, a mathematical precision that extends far beyond mere random chance. 137 stands as the clearest example. of this exquisite precision, a number that mysteriously connects disparate domains of physics, a ratio that possesses no units, a constant that ultimately determines whether atoms can even exist. This is not what one would expect from a random, meaningless universe. This is precisely what one would expect from an intelligently crafted cosmos. Einstein was understandably careful not to explicitly claim belief in a personal God, but he was equally clear that he vehemently rejected belief in a meaningless, purposeless universe. The pervasive order he observed within physics strongly suggested inherent meaning. And 137 remains one of the strongest pieces of evidence supporting that profound order. Wolfgang Pauli, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who famously discovered the exclusion principle, was even more deeply troubled by this elusive number. He devoted years collaborating with Carl Jung, the very founder of analytical psychology, desperately attempting to understand the enigma of 137. But why on earth would a physicist collaborate with a psychologist on what seemed to be a purely physics problem? Because Pauli profoundly sensed that 137 was not simply a physics question. He felt it intricately connected to something far deeper, to the profound relationship between mind and matter, to the recurring pattern that mysteriously appear in both physical reality and the depths of human psychology. Jung and Pauli famously wrote about synchronicity, about meaningful coincidences that seem far too precise to be attributed to mere randomness, about numbers that eerily appear in both the outer world of physics and the inner landscape of the psyche. 137 served as their central example, a number that physics could not definitively explain, but could also not possibly ignore. Now, let me unveil something even stranger. 137, in Hebrew gematria, that ancient system assigning numerical values to letters, remarkably, equals the word Kabbalah, the mystical tradition that claims to describe the hidden structure of reality. Is this coincidence? Or is it another example of what Carl Jung called synchronicity, a meaningful pattern connecting physics and mysticism? I'm not claiming this proves anything, but I am pointing out that the greatest physicists of the 20th century found this number so disturbing that they looked beyond physics for answers. Einstein, Feynman, Pauli, Eddington. These were not mystics. They were rigorous scientists. And they all felt that 137 was pointing towards something they could not grasp. Let me explain why this number actually matters for your daily reality. The fine structure constant determines how light interacts with matter. When you see colors, you are seeing the fine structure constant at work. The specific wavelengths that atoms absorb and emit depend on alpha. The rainbow exists because of 137. When you feel warmth from the sun, that is the fine structure constant. The cosmic forges that power the sun depend on alpha, change the number, and stars burn differently, or not at all. When you look in a mirror, the fact that light reflects instead of passing through depends on alpha. The entire experience of seeing is calibrated by this one mysterious number. Your body is made of atoms. Those atoms are held together by electromagnetic forces. The strength of those forces is determined by the fine structure constant. Your very existence is a consequence of 137. Every time you think a thought, neurons fire in your brain. Those neurons communicate through electrical signals. The speed and strength of those signals depend on the fine structure constant. Your consciousness itself is shaped by 137. Every time you feel an emotion, chemicals flow through your body. Those chemicals are made of atoms. Those atoms interact according to electromagnetic principles. Those principles are governed by alpha. Your feelings are calibrated by the same number that calibrates the stars. This is what makes 137 so profound. It is not abstract. It is not distant. It is intimate. It is the number that makes you possible. The number that shapes your every experience. The number that underlies every moment of your existence. And nobody knows why 137 has the value it does. This is what makes it so disturbing to physicists. We can measure it with incredible precision. In 2021, researchers at the Castres-le-Brossel laboratory in Paris measured the fine structure constant to 81 parts per trillion. We know its value with extraordinary accuracy, but we cannot explain it. There is no equation that derives 137 from other principles. There is no deeper theory that predicts this value. It appears in our equations as a brute fact, a given, a constant that we must accept, but cannot understand. Einstein believed the universe was comprehensible. He said the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. He thought human minds could grasp the design of reality, but he never explained 137. Nobody has. Some physicists hope that a future theory will derive this number from first principles. String theory, for example, contains many possible values for the fine structure constant. Perhaps our universe is one of many, each with different constants. And we exist in this one because only this value allows observers. This is called the anthropic principle. It does not really explain 137. It just says we observe this value because other values would not produce observers to observe anything. Other physicists find this deeply unsatisfying. It feels like giving up, like admitting that some things cannot be explained. But maybe that is the point. Maybe 137 is showing us the limits of physics. Maybe it is pointing toward a reality that mathematics can describe, but not explain. Maybe it is, as Eddington suggested, a signature, a fingerprint, a sign that the intelligently crafted cosmos was designed by a universal intelligence that understands mathematics far better than we do. Paul Dirac, who discovered antimatter and created quantum field theory, said God is a mathematician of a very high order, and he used very advanced mathematics in constructing the universe. Dirac was not religious in any conventional sense, but he recognized that the mathematical structure of reality suggested design. Not random chance, not meaningless accident, but intentional structure. 137 is the most striking example of this structure, a pure number with no units, a ratio that connects three domains of physics, a constant that determines whether life can exist, and it has no explanation. Let me show you something that connects this to the golden ratio. The golden ratio, phi, is another pure number that appears throughout nature. It shows up in spiral galaxies, in the proportions of shells, in the branching of trees, in the structure of DNA. Some researchers have even found connections between phi and the fine structure constant. One study showed that the golden rectangle can be used to derive both time dilation and length contraction from Einstein's special relativity. The golden ratio appears at the transition from Newtonian physics to relativistic physics, and there are mathematical relationships between phi and alpha that some find too precise to be coincidental, as if the same mathematical principle underlies both numbers, as if they are both expressions of a deeper pattern. Einstein would have found this fascinating. He believed in hidden unity. He believed the intelligently crafted cosmos was designed according to beautiful mathematical principles. The golden ratio and the fine structure constant may both be fingerprints of that design. Now I want to connect this to something Einstein understood deeply. Einstein talked about cosmic religious feeling. He described it as the strongest motivation for scientific research, a sense of adieu at the harmony and order of the universe. When you contemplate 137, you are experiencing what Einstein described, a number that should not exist, a number that makes no sense, and yet a number that makes your existence possible. This is not mysticism. This is physics, the most rigorous and tested physics we have. and it points toward mystery. The ancient tradition spoke of sacred numbers, numbers that encoded the structure of creation, numbers that connected the human to the divine. Modern physics has found such a number. It is not hidden in ancient texts. It is measured in laboratories with instruments of extraordinary precision, but its meaning remains as mysterious as any ancient code. 137. The number that physicists put on their walls and worry about. There is one more connection I want to show you. The number 137 appears in multiple spiritual traditions, in the Hebrew system of gematria, as I mentioned. It corresponds to Kabbalah, but it also appears in other contexts. Some researchers have observed that the patriarch Abraham lived to the ripe old age of 175, and Sarah lived to be 127, a difference of 48 years. Abraham was already 137 years old when Isaac was born. Think about that. Now, I'm not suggesting these connections prove anything, but it's fascinating. Numbers. They've always been seen as carriers of meaning. Ancient traditions assigned significance to ratios and constants that modern physics is only now starting to measure. Maybe the ancients intuited something that we are just rediscovering. Perhaps the mathematical structure of reality has always been visible to those who looked carefully. Perhaps 137 has been hiding in plain sight all along, waiting for physics to give it a name. This is what makes Einstein's equation truly profound. Not just E equals mc squared, which everyone knows, but the deeper constants that shape how E and m and c relate. The pure numbers that determine the fabric of reality. The ratios that have no units, and therefore exist independent of our human measurement systems. Einstein's truly hidden formula goes beyond just E equals mc squared. That equation is famous because it's relatively understandable. Mass and energy are, essentially, the same thing. But the fine structure constant is different. It's famous among physicists because it's not understandable. Because it suggests that physics points towards something physics itself cannot reach. 1/137, the charge of the electron squared, divided by Planck's constant times the speed of light, divided by 4 pi times the permittivity of free space. A mind-boggling combination of fundamental constants that produces a pure number, a ratio that exists independent of measurement, a fingerprint that the universe leaves on every interaction of light and matter. This is what they never taught you in school, not because they were trying to keep it a secret, but because they couldn't explain it. And let's face it, education prefers explainable things. But the unexplainable, that's where the interesting questions live. The questions that kept Einstein awake at night. The questions that drove Pauli to work with Carl Jung. The questions that made Feynman call 137 a magic number. If you understand what this number means, you understand something about the very nature of existence that most people never even consider. You understand that reality is fundamentally calibrated, that the intelligently crafted cosmos operates according to mathematical principles we can measure but cannot fully explain. That behind the equations is something that chose those equations, not random chance, not blind mechanism, but precise calibration, or existence itself. Think about what this means for your understanding of yourself. You are not an accident. You are the result of calibration. The fine structure constant had to be exactly what it is for you to exist. The intelligently crafted cosmos had to be fine-tuned for complexity, for chemistry, for biology, for consciousness. You are looking at a universe that was prepared for observers, a universe that contains the exact constants needed for minds to emerge, that can measure those constants. Is this just a coincidence? Is it mere chance? Or is this evidence that universal intelligence was always part of the plan? Einstein himself pondered this. He asked whether the moon exists only when he looks at it. He was troubled by the role of observation in quantum mechanics. He sensed that consciousness and physics were connected in ways that materialist science stubbornly refused to acknowledge. 137 is the clearest evidence of this connection, a number that determines whether observers can exist, a ratio that calibrates the universe for consciousness, a constant that makes mind possible. If you are looking for evidence that you matter, that existence has meaning, that the universe is not indifferent to life, look at 137. It is the strongest case physics can make for intelligent design. And it's measured, verified, and completely unexplained. This is Einstein's hidden formula, not the one you see on t-shirts, the one that haunted the greatest minds in physics, the one that suggests the universe is more meticulously designed than we dare to believe. 137. The number the divine used to create reality, or, if you prefer, the number that reality uses to create itself. Either way, it's there, measured, verified, and completely unexplained. So, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you dismiss it as a mere coincidence? Will you blindly accept the anthropic explanation? That, frankly, dodges the question? Or will you sit with the mystery? Because the mystery is real. Einstein felt it. Feynman felt it. Pauli felt it so deeply. He spent years with Carl Jung, desperately trying to grasp it. And now, you feel it too. The universe is trying to tell you something. Through the number 137, physics has delivered the message, but physics, alone, cannot read it. Perhaps that's where spirituality truly begins, where physics ends and meaning begins, at the very edge of what equations can describe but cannot fully explain. At that edge is marked by a number, a pure ratio, a mystery hiding in plain sight. 137. What would it mean if this number were finally decoded? What would we learn about the very nature of reality? Some physicists believe a future theory will explain 137, that string theory, or some successor, will derive this value from first principles. That what seems like a brute fact will ultimately turn out to be a mathematical necessity. Others doubt this. They suspect 137 is irreducible, a given, a starting point, that cannot be derived from anything more fundamental. And some wonder if the very distinction between accident and design is simply the wrong frame. Perhaps 137 points toward a reality where mathematics and mind are not separate, where the constants of physics and the structures of consciousness are simply different expressions of the same underlying pattern. This is where Einstein's cosmic religious feeling becomes profoundly relevant. Not belief in a personal God, but a deep recognition that reality is ordered in ways that transcend purely mechanical explanation, that the universe has a quality of universal intelligence, that physics points toward meaning, even when it cannot fully explain that meaning. 137 is the clearest pointing, the signpost that even the most rigorous scientists simply could not ignore. Remember this number. Put it on your wall, like Feynman suggested, and wonder why it exists. Wonder why it has exactly this value. Wonder what kind of universe would produce such a number, because those questions lead somewhere. Somewhere that physics alone simply cannot go. Somewhere that Einstein pointed toward when he spoke of cosmic religious feeling. Somewhere that the ancient traditions described with different words, but a strikingly similar sense of awe, the same somewhere, reached by different paths. If this changes how you see reality, you are not alone. You are joining a tradition of seekers. That includes the greatest scientists in history, those who looked at the equations and saw more than just equations, those who measured 137 and felt they were measuring something profoundly sacred. When you support this channel through Super Thanks, you are supporting the exploration of these connections, The revelations. That academic boundaries keep separated. The questions that education avoids. Because it simply cannot answer them. This isn't about answers, folks. It's about asking the right questions. And the enigma of 137. It's one of the most profound questions physics has ever dared to ask. Why does this number even exist? Why does it have this specific value? And what does it mean that the intelligently crafted cosmos is so exquisitely calibrated for existence? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Tell me what you think 137 signifies. Do you believe it's a random fluke? Or is it intentionally designed? Do you feel what Einstein felt when he pondered the mysterious order of existence? Because the viewers of this video aren't your average viewers. They're the ones who sense that the official explanations, well, they're missing something. They're the seekers, the wanderers, the ones who've got 137 scrawled on their wall and refuse to stop asking. Why? You're one of them now, the number. It's swirling in your mind. The question, it's burning in your heart. And the answer, if it exists, awaits somewhere beyond what physics, in its current form, can even reach. Einstein. He pointed the way. The number? That's your map. And the journey into meaning? That's yours to embark on. Here's the ultimate truth about the number 137. It will likely remain shrouded in mystery, not because science hasn't tried to unravel it, but because the mystery itself might be the whole point. The question itself might be the answer. The fact that physics coughs up a number it can't explain might be whispering something about the inherent limits of physical explanation, maybe reality. It's not entirely reducible to cold, hard mechanism. Maybe there's meaning, deeply woven into the very fabric of existence. Maybe the ancient traditions were right all along, that certain numbers are sacred, not because of mere superstition, but because they encode something profound about the structure of creation, something that transcends purely material explanation. Einstein. He sensed this deep truth. He called it cosmic religious feeling. He felt it every single time he contemplated the breathtaking order of the intelligently crafted cosmos, the beautiful equations, the mysterious constants, the improbable precision. That makes our existence as even possible, and you can feel it too, as right now. Contemplating the number 137, a number that seems to make absolutely no sense, a number that, on the surface, explains nothing, and yet, a number without which nothing would exist. That's the paradox. That's the core of the mystery. That is Einstein's hidden formula, 137, the fingerprint of creation itself, the number that haunts physics and beckons us toward the profound and the unknown. Now you know why the greatest minds have worried about it. And now you can worry about it too.